Democrats. Can't we all just get along? So let's talk about that for just a moment, because there's been a lot of issues lately. I think President Trump and some Republicans have been pointing out some of the words from Representative Maxine Waters out of California, talking about what happened at that Red Hen restaurant last week in Lexington, Virginia, where Sarah Huckabee Sanders was told to leave. What's going on here?
I'm going to go back to what Antoine said a little while ago. We've got to stop seeing ourselves as red and blue. Our politics may be red and blue, but we're Americans, just like we're South Carolinians. And though we may come at things from a different angle, we're always looking for that better community that we can be a part of, that better state, that better country. And I think that when you start looking at it, you know, we spar back and forth when we talk about politics, but we're actually good friends off the air. That's right. And we try very hard to have conversations. We, after one evening's broadcast one night, we sat here and had a lengthy conversation about race to understand what was going on off camera. And that's the place where those discussions have to continue taking place. And to be able to turn around and say, I'm not going to have you here because you work for the White House, is really disingenuous to the whole concept of what America's about.
First of all, I think this was a manufactured crisis by Sarah Huckabee Sanders and the presidency and all those people who were joining in on the choir talking about how bad this is. The truth of the matter is, Mr. Trump, during the course of the campaign and so forth, started this whole argument of, you know, roughing people up, said he would pay legal fees if you punch someone, all the things. There was a Republican candidate for Congress who body slammed a reporter. That's no here nor there. That's what was. What we have to do going forward is remember that no matter who occupies whatever office, the people may change, but the issues will remain the same. Issues supersede race, political identity, gender, socioeconomic status. It is all about what can make our quality of lives better, and that's what we should be focused on. America is still a very young country. We're still going through this thing called the American experiment, and we're not too far down the road with that. So with that being said, there's going to be a lot of differences of opinion, but we should not let our opinion take us back to a place that's been so dangerous in our history.
I think there's a place for us to have the marketplace of ideas, for us to debate back and forth on the way things should be done. That's where the whole concept of true ideas of America come forth, because the cream rises to the crop, so to speak, on top on that one, because we can go back and forth on ideas. We can have a concept of what we want to have happen, but it's in the compromises, it's in the in-between where we actually find common ground.
Well, Antoine, what do you make of Maxine Waters and her comments? Basically, get in the faces of Trump supporters, get in their face, have a confrontation, push back, I think were some of the words that she's using. Is that something that the Democrats are going to be embracing right now, or what?
Well, here's what I would tell you. Our lives are the sum total of our experiences, and we all have different experiences. Therefore, how we approach different situations are different. My experiences are not like hers. She grew up in the civil rights movement, grew up in California, where times were a little different. Her career in Congress has always been one of resistance and pushback, so forth. I would have done it or said it a little different, but that doesn't make her right and me wrong, and vice versa. I would have said it a little different. I don't think everyone takes the same approach as her, but I'm not going to sit up here and criticize her. But what I will do is that we have to hold elected officials accountable, and whatever that looks like, without being violent. There's a difference between being violent and resisting what we know to be wrong in this country.
I think when you take Maxine Waters making these statements, you know what, here's the thing about it. We've spent the last, 3-4 minutes talking about this. Maxine Waters is getting exactly out of this what Maxine Waters wants.
Same thing Donald Trump from during the course
it's
of
no
the
different, because what they're looking for is the attention that comes from that. Are we really talking about civility? Are we really talking about what's going on? Not really. We're talking about the fact that you've got this person saying this and this person saying this, when the reality is the greatest part of civility and the ideas that need to come forth from that are the ones that you have when you sit down and you have a cup of coffee or you're talking over breakfast, instead of fighting back and forth and bickering over issues like this.
But I will say this, JR. Not many people outside of the political bubble probably knew who Maxine Waters was prior to this year. Everybody knows, for the most part, who the President of the United States is. Leadership starts at the top, and the buck stops with the President. So if the President can behave himself and conduct themselves properly, I think that will set a tone for the trickle down, for whether it's an elected official or whether it's just Dave and I having a conversation. But the more he ramps up the rhetoric, telling people to punch people in the face, telling candidates it's okay to yell and scream and do all the things, the more we'll have this type of behavior in our politics.
I've got 10 faces. My 10 kids are sitting at home right now watching this. And they know full well exactly what I'm getting ready to say, because the politics that we have got to be based upon one idea. And we talk about this at church all the time. Jesus made it real simple. Treat other people how? The way you want to be treated. And it's got to happen in both directions, because if it doesn't, it's going to end up in the incivility that we're talking about.
Since we're talking about the Jesus we both love,
yes,
the Bible also talks about to whom much is given, much is required. There's been, like him or not, a lot of responsibility has been given to the commander-in-chief. He has to lead by example, because our children are watching, your children are watching, my nieces are watching, my mother's watching, my aunt, my sister, my dad. Everybody's watching to see how he will conduct himself. And that will impact how people think now, and it will set a tone for the future.
And that's why we get along so well.
That's
every
right.
single
That's my
week.
man.
All right. Dave Wilson, Republican Strategies. Antoine Seawright, Democratic Strategies.
Thanks,
They are there.
Thank you so very much, guys. All right, when we come back, we'll have a check on your forecast. Be sure to stay with us.